Welcome back to On the Pulse, our Hoop Nursing and Healthcare podcast. You're joined on this very clammy afternoon by yours truly, Rhian and Lauren. Today we'll be chatting about being a student nurse and how to survive the next 3 years.
Now that September is upon us and you begin your nursing journey, we thought it would be topical to give some tips and tricks on how to survive your next 3 years. Rhian, our resident nurse, is going to share some invaluable tips and insights that may support you during this time. So, Rhian, what does that first year as a student nurse look like?
2006 when I started, that first year, the first 6 weeks was very much theory, university-based lectures, and we had a clinical skills suite as well, and that would be getting us ready for going out on your first placement. Nothing will prepare you as best as that, but you will never understand that first shift on placement until you do it, because all the prep in the world is fantastic, but it's not going to prepare you for real life. The clinical suite, clinical skills suite, there is this incredible technology. It's a massive robot of a human man, or I think it was a man at the time. And basically that man will go into cardiac arrest. And then the machines will go off as if you're in a hospital situation. So, but nothing prepares you for an actual human being, because then it's the emotion attached to that. So anyway, the first 6 weeks, university, and you're exhausted because it's such a lot to take in. I was working as a care assistant prior, and I think that gave me an understanding of emotional tests that I would face. But it's still, I still felt quite ill prepared in some ways, because you just don't know. It's the unknown, isn't it? But I think that would definitely be something that I would encourage, is people to get some care work under their belt, just again but in terms of that first year, you've got 6 weeks theory, and then you're on placement for 6 weeks. Then it kind of comes to Christmas, and they come back again, it's theory, and then it's placement, and then it's theory, and then it's placement. And that was kind of how it fell. In the first year, the second lot of placement, they actually do, well, again, we're going back, but when I did it, it was a round robin, they referred to it as. So I had applied to do adult nursing, whereas there were people in my year that, as we expect, mental health nursing, learning disabilities, or children's paediatric nursing. But this round robin was basically to give every single person an opportunity to explore different areas, just to make sure, which is a brilliant idea, to make sure actually, are you on the right course for you? And we would have people, and we did have people transfer, because actually they maybe I went to a day mental health, day hospital, which opened my eyes, I also went to a nursery as well, because the thing is, with paediatrics, that naturally there is less placements available. So we had to go to nurseries and things like that. And again, I mean, it gave me contraception, if nothing else. But it also, I mean, I suppose my outlook on children now, I'm too emotional. And personally, so my mum lost a child, and I think I would always go to that. So I couldn't do paediatrics. I knew from day dot I didn't want to do it, because I'm too emotionally attached to that situation. Yeah. And I think that for me, it just wasn't right. But anyway, it gave everybody, though, that opportunity. And that was great. And then you go on another placement then. So I think my first placement, and again, general nurse, I went on a gastro ward. And that is so pivotal, that first placement, because that's the time you experience many firsts. I think I saw, last offices is where when someone's passed away, it's a privilege, it's considered a privilege, absolutely, because you are cleaning that person, giving them the dignity, closing their eyes, there's a lot of detail people don't see and don't understand. And I think that, for me, I didn't know what last offices was. I had seen, because of my role as a care assistant, I had seen somebody else who had passed away, and I'd witnessed, I suppose, that, rather than being directly involved, but it gave me insight into that. I can't explain. I burst into tears. I'm not, dramatically, but I couldn't control the tears. Seeing somebody pass away for the first time, and then I'll never forget the sister on that ward. She was very matronesque, if you will. I loved her, though. I was scared of her, but I loved her because I felt safe with her. And she was fantastic. She held my hand. But before I went in, she even said to me, it's okay to cry. And to have that strong female role model there, who I was petrified of, to say it's okay, gave me reason to be okay, if that makes sense. So it's those things. I think it's your first year, your first placement, your first death perhaps, or your first admission, your first cardiac arrest. There's so many firsts in that first year. That's the kind of practicality of how it looks in terms of the split with it's 50-50. But there's a lot to digest that first year. And some people, if I'm honest, they left because some people can't cope with it.
I think it's important as well, actually, for people, you've just said there's a lot of firsts in that first year, to be kind to themselves. I think they probably have so much pressure, or there's such an expectation of, I have to be X, Y, and Z as a student nurse, or I have to conduct myself in a certain way. And I think it's taking the pressure off yourself that it's okay to feel any which way you're going to feel over the next 12 months. If you're out of your depth, that is normal. If you're emotional on shift, that is normal, because what you're seeing is not normal to you, actually, for all of those firsts. That is such a new experience. And I think it's just, I think the biggest thing is to be kind to yourself, or be patient with yourself. You're not going to know everything right away. You're learning as you go. And I think that's just one thing I would say. I'm not clinical. I've been to university, but just with anything new, I think it's just taking the time. We all progress, we all develop, we all learn at different paces as well. So if you're comparing yourself to somebody else, you can't do that, because we all grow, we all learn so differently. And I think that's just one thing, is be patient with yourself, and how you're feeling is warranted.
Yeah, and it's okay, isn't it, to feel that way? No, I agree.
Absolutely. So what do you feel helped you during that first year? Obviously, with a lot of firsts there, what really helped you kind of continue and push through?
Friends, I would say, is the biggest. You've got to have an element of humour about you. You've got to, even you may not be the comedian of the group, but you've got to get the banter. It is, because what you experience, as you just said there, you've got to be kind to yourself, and kindness is surround yourself with people that understand it, but also they can make light of certain situations, and that's not being disrespectful, but it's just, you need to be able to blow off steam, that I mentioned before, but also have that camaraderie of people that get it, because it is such a unique vocation, and what you're doing, as you say, all those firsts, when you've got people, especially peers maybe, who are qualified already. And for example, with myself, I found it really beneficial to live on site at the hospital, because I was exposed then to qualified nurses who maybe some had been qualified 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Doctors were there, and actually you build that camaraderie, but also that support network. In any walk of life, even now, you've got to surround yourself with people that enhance you, but also help you, not just kind of, I can't explain it really, I suppose, but in simple terms, friends, that's what got me through it. Because there are times when you question it, is this for me? Sometimes the student nurse on placement as well, he can be standing around a bit like a spare guest at a wedding. That's politely put. I was going to... but you can, and there's times when you're a bit lost, and maybe you haven't got a mentor who's as proactive as you want, or won't give you as much direction, because maybe they think they're being nice, but actually you want to get stuck in because you don't want to clock watch. There's nothing worse. In essence, surround yourself with people that will help you, but also you can help them. It's not just a one-way street. And I had some really great friends during my training, and I'm still in touch with them now, and they've gone to do wonderful things. But without them, I've got one friend, she lives actually in New Zealand, but we did our training together. I'm sure she thought it was a hindrance to her, which honestly, she'll listen to this and go, yes, she'll be nodding, I can see it. But she was a massive help to me and a massive support. And I don't mean she was doing my job for me, but, she would ground me again when I got a bit, oh God, is this for me? And you'd have those shifts that were a nightmare, but she would ground me and say, no, carry on. So surround yourself with those people.
In your opinion, if there is anyone listening who feels this way, do you think it's normal for someone during those first couple of months where everything's very new to deliberate whether that career is right for them or not?
Absolutely. I think as well, what you will find is, I remember, and there's key people on my cohort, I don't think they are nurses any longer, and they were so confident that I thought, how are you so confident? It's making me feel really inferior. And I thought, oh my goodness, I shouldn't be here. Maybe I'm not. I remember as well, I'll share something. Here she goes. One of the clinical sessions we had to do was practice giving an injection, a subcutaneous injection and an intramuscular injection. They're very different techniques. You get given a sponge with different layers of the dermis, so you get to see, anyway, I'll go into clinical. But I remember the tutor said, is anybody scared of needles? My hand shot up. Bear in mind, I used to be the kind of person that my mother would come and get blood taken with me. You know, I was that pathetic with it. I'm not saying everyone's pathetic, they've got a fear of needles, they're very sincere. I was pathetic. So I then, with that I was the only one to put my hand up, it's fine, and I was the only one to prick myself and have a needle stick injury from that session. Because I just was so nervous, I was shaking, and I slipped, and I pricked myself, and I bled. So, yes, I did have a little bit of PTSD from that. But yeah, that was one instance where I felt like a complete fraud and I shouldn't be there because if I did that to myself on a sponge, I shouldn't be anywhere near my hand, how on earth can I do that to somebody? And my worry was they'll sense my fear. I don't want to make somebody who's anxious. I've got ridiculous levels of empathy and emotional intelligence. And that's really blowing hot air, but I do. My general, I suppose, common sense, we waver. But in that instance, it's all about, for me, how would that person feel if they see a sweaty, anxious-looking student nurse coming at you with a needle? And that's all my head. You know, that's where I went. So again, it's thinking about, oh my God, am I the right person for this? And then you would see these people in this cohort, no problem, yeah, fine. But they had no emotional intelligence and they were so direct. And I'm very direct. I know I am. I'd like to think I'm compassionately direct, if that's even a thing. But I would never say something just to be without thought of that person, how they're going to receive that. And there were people there and I thought, oh my goodness, I wouldn't want you speaking to my family or treating my family if you're going to behave like that. You know, because of the way they were rude to lecturers. And these lecturers are they're from the practice. They're nurses. They know, they're frontline staff. They've got the experience. I get challenging people, absolutely. But the way some people did that, I still can see these people now in my head and thinking, I'm not for me.
That links on, actually, because I was going to ask, what makes a good student nurse?
Somebody with fear, I think, because they're not dangerous, because they're not going to go gung-ho and go, right, yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. Somebody that asks questions. Yeah. Maybe not fear is probably the wrong word, but somebody who knows their limits. But also it's the questions for me. I think ask questions. I would rather have somebody say to me, Rhi, I'm sorry I've asked you this 3 times. I just want to make sure that I'm doing this right. Because we're dealing with people. You're dealing with people, their physical health, their emotional well-being, their mental health. When you look at the whole kind of spectrum of it, it could be really dangerous if somebody doesn't ask questions. And then somebody with a warmth about them. And I think you have to think, would you want that person nursing your family?
What do you feel was the most challenging part of being a student nurse?
That is a great question. So many challenges. I think the biggest challenge, but I'm also grateful for it, is being pushed out of your comfort zone so frequently. Because you normalise the level of anxiety because you are making sure, well, to me, the good nurses do. I'm not saying I'm excellent, Florence Nightingale, but the nurses that care, they want to make sure things are being done right, but they're going to be pushed out their comfort zone, And I think for me, I've got one in particular. I was on a community placement and my mentor was lovely. Shout out to Michelle. I can't remember your second name, Michelle, but you were fantastic. She just gave me, she could see I was nervous and that I didn't want, and she'd asked me up front, what don't you like doing? And I said, removal of sutures, which are stitches, removal of staples and injections. So what did she have me do? I had to remove 42 staples from a gentleman's hip. I did not sleep the night before. I was shaking. I was that poor guy, but he was so just, go for it. And he put me at ease. But my goodness, I'm so glad you did that.
Yeah.
The other thing then was I had to give a Zoladex injection, which is for prostate cancer. And it uses treatment. I think it's used for treatment for other things. But anyway, what that means is that the needle it's like a pencil thickness. Bear in mind, this is somebody, first year, hate hate needles, still petrified of them. But I had to give, before giving that, because it puts an implant into the, I think it was the stomach, if I remember, you have to give a normal size needle, a normal, in inverted commas, as an anaesthetic to numb the area. So what she did was, right, okay, this is your biggest fear. I'm throwing you in the deep end safely, because she was there. And she gave me, she was that crutch then for me to do that. Oh my goodness, that nurse, that mentor I had, was my biggest challenge, but also I'm most grateful for, because she just taught me so much.
And sometimes it is those challenges you do have, it is taking those head on, isn't it? Because naturally, I think regardless of what field you're in, you will always put off the thing you are worrying about most, you will always put off till the end. So I think sometimes it is really good to just nip that in the bud. And I think, especially for the student nurses, it's okay to not want to do these things or to not know how to do these things because you've never done them before. You've never learned about this before. You've never had to do it. You know, you're not expected to know. And I think going back to the being kind to yourself, it is all learning. You've got someone there as your mentor who's there to support you. But if you are in positions where you're pushed out of your comfort zones, and this happens in everyone's careers, that's normally when you learn the most. Absolutely, or you see the biggest change or transformation in yourself. So even though it's not at the time the most pleasant, afterwards, I think the adrenaline and the feeling after you've done that thing that you've put off or you've worried about has the biggest impact,
Absolutely.
I think, on somebody's development, personally and professionally.
Well, they say, don't they, that when you do something outside your comfort zone, you expand in that comfort zone.
Yeah.
So the more you do, the bigger that becomes and the more confident you become. So I completely agree with what you can apply it to any walk of life, not just nursing.
What would you do differently, Rhi, if you went back to your university days?
Well, being older, uglier and wiser now, I think I would have I'd had more confidence, I suppose. I think I was very, very scared. I was so scared of hurting someone. That was the fear. It wasn't the fear of doing something wrong. It was the fear of getting something wrong for detriment of somebody. So it was, and actually, I think take a few more risks. You know, not every mentor was like Michelle, you know, and because of that, I didn't push myself because of a fear. I think that's probably something. And then
I think that's good though for anyone listening, because looking back, that is something you'd want to do. So if there are any listeners out there, hopefully that will be the nudge to just do it. And even if you don't want to do it, put your hand up, put yourself forward for that anyway, because it'll come back to reward you. And I think sometimes you always wish you'd shared that before you'd started.
Yeah, hindsight, isn't it? Hindsight's a wonderful thing. We can all say, oh, I would have done this differently, because we reflect on it. But I think if you are scared or you're a bit anxious, thinking, you know, you want to care for people, but actually the crux of it and the clinical side of it just scare you, that's okay. Do it anyway, because you're going to be a bloody brilliant nurse. Again, not saying I am, but I'd like to think I've got a good, you know, my rapport with my patients has always been, you know, great. And I love, you know, and there's the boundaries of the nurse as well. I found quite scary at times. It was the you know, the code of conduct. Not that I found that scary per se, but it's drummed into you. This is how nurses behave. And it's not just when you're in work, it's outside of work. And I was scared of that, thinking, oh my God, what if I go and get drunk? What if I say something? What if I'm you know, and it was that fear I just had. But I quite liked it. It was the respect I had for the profession from day one. Yeah. And I think that's really, really important. But I'm glad I had that. But also, just the fear, I would have let go of that a little bit. I maybe took it to the nth degree.
I think they say that, don't they? Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yes, that is a book as well.
You've mentioned the importance, of having a support network. What would you say to someone who is feeling incredibly anxious about this time?
Talk. Now, if you've maybe not established a group of peers or friends in my instance with the accommodation where I was going to be living, I moved in prior to starting the degree, talk to your personal tutor. They are there and they're used to people being anxious. You know, it's a natural, I suppose, emotion and feeling that's going to be attached to you starting something. So, you know, everybody, even when we're children, we have an ideology of what a nurse is. You know, we see it, you know, it was on programmes as you're growing up. There's this expectation, and actually not everybody fits into that box. And I don't fit into that box. I'm outspoken. I'm, you know, gobby, for want of a better word, you know. But actually I was scared because I didn't think I could meet that expectation. I did not think that I would be I knew I cared, but I thought I cared too much as well, maybe about the wrong things. So I think if you're feeling anxious, just talk to your personal tutor, but also accept that you don't, there's not, yes, there's a job description for a nurse, but that personality, as long as you care and you do things for the good of that patient and for the best interest, and, ask questions and don't do anything, and be confident that you can say no. In that instance I mentioned earlier, for example, with the Zoladex injection, I could have said no and Michelle would not have pushed me any further. But I felt safe because I'd already opened up to her that these are my fears. Because she could see visibly that I was, believe it or not, I was quite quiet at times on the ward because I would want to be learning and absorbing. But I was also, I wasn't confident, because how can you be confident when you are doing something so new and also so patient affecting? You're affecting people's lives. So I think talk to your personal tutor if you don't feel you've got that network around you. Make sure as well that you prioritise downtime for yourself, because that is so important, whether that's binge watching Friends or, whatever it is, Gossip Girl, whatever, or go for a big walk, get out in the fresh air, go out drinking. Again, I'm not an advocate for alcoholism, but my point is go out and just have a bit of a blowout. It's okay. As long as you're not working the next day or that day, fine, because you've got to do things, whatever it is that tickles your fancies from, to calm you down. Life can be, especially with the pandemic now, is what I would say. These nurses that are just about to start on their degree, they have seen in the media what nurses have done and how wonderful nurses are. So, but it's making sure you balance, think about how nurses are, and people, how many times do you hear the angels, your angels? My mother's just been in hospital and heard, they're all angels. And they are. In the main, absolutely. But again, if you're telling somebody as a student nurse, this person is this, kind of biblical character, and you have to fit this, then are we then setting them up to fail if maybe they don't, and they've got imposter syndrome when they do start? So just keep talking, make sure you prioritise your mental health. And there are going to be times as well, I would say, when things affect you. I've got memories that are sticking with me forever. And that is normal as well. But it's just, again, within the boundaries and constraints of, data protection and confidentiality, talk to peers. Yeah. But talk as well to friends, but obviously don't name anything. But just, I've got a friend my best friend, she works in social services. She tells me nothing about her job, but she says she had a stressful day and she offloads. But she doesn't tell me any detail. She just says, I'm so annoyed, blah, 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 and just tells me how she's feeling rather than the detail of the situation. Just do that.
I think chances are as well, people or your peers are feeling the same way as you are, regardless of how they present themselves. Mm-hmm. I think some people are more open to disclosing how they feel than others. So I think if you put yourself out there and you have these conversations, you'd probably be very surprised by how many people actually feel the exact same way as you feel. And I think we're in a time now where I think so many people do put on a front, and we're very big at Hoop in terms of talking and, and opening up and making sure you have those conversations. Put yourself out there, because I can guarantee there'll be someone in that room, majority of people in that room, who feel the exact same way as you.
Absolutely. I think it's, again, such a great point to raise, because you're right, they are. I think, but, if people aren't happy to talk about their feelings, there will be, especially nowadays, the university will signpost you. So if you're more comfortable maybe talking via email, so talking doesn't have to be outspoken and chatting. It can be communication, isn't it? It's reaching out, whatever channel you're comfortable with, use that.
And I think sometimes people almost want someone to start that interaction with them. Yeah. In my experience, I've known people where they've wanted someone to make that first move and say, I'm feeling a certain way, because they relate then. And I think sometimes there's that fear factor of, if I say it and they don't agree, do I look less able to do the job?
Are they going to judge you because you've put yourself out there? But actually, 9 times out of 10, no.
Yeah.
Everybody is so busy thinking about how everyone else perceives them, and they're so busy looking at themselves, nobody actually gives a shit.
No.
But it's just having that confidence and courage then just to speak out. But do not let any profession or anything affect your mental health, because it will affect your mental health, but it's how you manage that and how the support you get around that.
And I think nursing, like Rhian has said, it is not the same as other degrees. No. You are doing the 12-hour shifts, you're doing the Christmas week, you're around the clock. And I think prioritise doing things you love doing outside of your work time as well. don't let your entire life become work.
Yeah.
You have to have that break where you're pursuing hobbies and interests that are of interest to you as well, because that's just going to...
It's a much better way of putting it.
You're going to have that break, and you're going to be re-energized. And I think you need that balance. If the pandemic taught us anything, it's when you're out of work, you need to make the most of that time with your family, with your friends, whatever hobby you have. I would say just to make that little bit of extra effort, it will be much easier to have those extra couple of hours in bed because you've done a few 12-hour shifts. But I think make that extra effort to make the most of the time you have outside of your learning, because that is going to... You've got that balance, and that's just going to be right for you, or the best thing for you.
And you need to rest your body and your mind as well. So I think it's that, again, what you're saying there, I completely agree with. It's, making sure that you're making the most of that time you're not in work, but also it's okay if you want to stay in bed for the whole day, binge watching something on TV and napping throughout the day, because you're going to be tired. I mean, one thing I haven't mentioned is you will be expected to do night shifts. My first night shift, I remember feeling like I'd been hit by a bus. I'm not a night person. I go to bed at 8:30 at night now, always been quite an early bird for bed, and I get up there at 4:30, 5 o'clock. That's just my body clock. To force me to do night shifts, oh my goodness. The following day, it was like I was a werewolf at home. I was vile because I was just so tired, but also I got FOMO. So I would sleep maybe for 2 or 3 hours, and I'd wake up thinking, I'd cry. I remember ringing my mum, crying, I can't do this. I was, panicking because I was thinking, I've got to go back in now tonight. I've got it. And so I'd force myself. And then you put pressure on yourself to go to sleep, which makes it worse. You still can't sleep. There were times when that tests you, because that, there are some people then, night shifts, bang, they can do it. Lovely. They love it. We've got nurses now at the agency that do it. And testament to them. I personally feel like I've been on a 24-hour flight to Australia after one of them. I just can't do it. So again, expectations, that pushed you, but I did it. It's not, I say I can't do it, I just hated them. But I did it because you have to do these things in order to, feel what it's like on a night shift. It's very, very different. Actually, the camaraderie is very different. I love it. I loved that bit. I just physically was exhausted. But yeah, so that's another expectation, I suppose, I didn't really touch on, so I thought I'd better mention that quickly as well.
For the students listening, what were some of your Champagne highlights of your first year, and what can they look forward to?
Do you know, I remember there was a gentleman, the first ward I worked on. I actually worked with my one of my really good friends on that ward, and I think she would listen to this and laugh, because me and her, we had some fun. We got a bit of a reputation of being the gigglers, because we would but we also were able to lift the room because of the banter, and very quickly. And our mentors, I think they loved to hate us at times. We were a bit irritating looking back, but it was always for the greater good of the team. We would, never in malicious ways. Anyway, this gentleman was really quite unwell, and his wife was so happy with the care that we'd given him, and the interaction, the bedside manner. We were just lovely. We were, made him laugh. And being in hospital as a patient is so draining at times. I don't know if anyone has, but I've been a patient a few times, and when you are there, oh gosh, it's sometimes, if you don't have any banter going, and you're worried about whatever you're in there for, it's not home, you don't sleep well, you're sleep deprived, you're tired, it's just a whole host of things. So you want to lift the mood. So with this one gentleman, and he went down for surgery actually. It's the first theatre that I witnessed, and it was an amazing experience, that was. But his wife bought me in a box of chocolates, a card to say thank you. And that still sticks with me, because that was so unexpected. But it was, oh my goodness. And it was just because it was a recognition. And she said, you've been fantastic. You two, you girls have been brilliant. Because it was that extra bit. But, that was one of them, if I'm honest. The other one would be probably that Zoladex injection with Michelle, because that, as you said earlier, the sense of achievement and the adrenaline. I did it. I didn't hurt him. All those fears and anxieties I had, I still did it, and I did it well. So I had to really push myself. But for me, that was one of them. The biggest highlight of that first year, though, for me, just to tie it all together, is the fact that I finished that year and with such a stronger mindset, with a stronger skill set, and just more confident. I was still going to be timid going to year two, because your expectations go up, etc., etc. But I had achieved so much, and I just think, even the bad days, and there really are dark days as student nurse. You just can't. I can't even tell you, and I would be here all day. But it's that satisfaction of you survived that and your resilience is building day on day. Yeah. So I think for me, and to anyone listening who's about to start, honestly, stick with it. There are days when you don't want to, but I promise you, it is so worth it. In my career, the impact and difference I have made, and I know I have because you see it. I promise you, no other vocation and career will do that for you. I think another tip I've got is to, if possible, I appreciate it's not possible for everybody depending on circumstances, but I worked a 13-hour shift on a Saturday in a nursing home. And it was a nursing home that I actually ended up nursing in and managing. And that gave me, that supported that anxiety. It instilled more confidence and exposed me to more, I suppose, direct care and expectations of the nurses because I was working alongside them. So I was a healthcare assistant and I was working with nurses and they were fantastic. And seeing how different they all were, I suppose, gave me that confidence. So another tip I would have, if possible, pick up, whether that's in private sector or the NHS as a bank healthcare assistant, pick up some extra work. It just manages your expectations a bit better as well. But also, we all need money. But in addition to that, it was the experience, I think. It gave me a bit of insight into a different avenue. And actually, I then went into private sector. I didn't actually work in the NHS when I qualified. So it opens up different doors as well.
What we do want to say is good luck, stick with it, push through all the challenges you're going to face because you have got this.
Absolutely got this.
We hope you found this podcast or this episode helpful and hope you've taken something away. And if you do have any questions or any concerns, you're more than welcome to get in touch with us directly. We can support you in any way that we can. But you have got this. It will be tough, but it will be worth it.
Absolutely. And actually, if anybody is looking for some additional work and they, maybe you are like myself, I wanted the private sector. We do offer work in the private sector for support workers and healthcare assistants. So it might be worth even just a call and a chat about it. And actually, what have we got that is of relevance to you, but also of interest to you, which areas? It allows you to explore and connect then with clients and potential future employers for you as well. So it's definitely worth having a think about if you can accommodate that. Get in touch with us at hooprecruitment.co.uk or contact the office on 02922 400 519. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye.